Hi, I'm Wayne Tan. I'm a Manhattan property agent here in Manhattan, New York, and I do a lot of buyer representation. That means I'm mainly a buyer's agent where I represent buyers in selecting the right property for investment. This opening slide, this presentation is about engaging a property agent in Manhattan, New York, and the opening slide here are just some examples of our clients' apartments. The one on the left here has dual exposures in a luxury building. It faces north here and east here, so there's a lot of light because it has dual exposures, which is rare in Manhattan. The one in the middle here is actually the view from our client's apartment in the West Village, and this was negotiated during the pandemic lockdown. I recall it was in May of 2020. You can see a lot of blue sky because of all the low-rise buildings, which is rare in Manhattan, and you can see the Empire State Building. The one on the right here was booked at pre-construction stage. We waited 2 years for completion, and when it was completed, it was rented out right away. So this was a new development, the one on the right. Let's move on to how to engage a property agent in Manhattan. Let me just bring out all the bullet points. Number one, a buyer's property agent is not common in many countries. I know from my experience in most countries, the agents represent the interests of their sellers, and someone who's interested in buying would ask the listings from several agents, and these agents respectively would send their listings, and then the buyer evaluates and decides and so forth. The point is that there's no buyer-focused agent in most countries to objectively advise the buyer, because the buyer is just getting information from the respective sellers agents. But here in the US, we have a buyer's agent. So a buyer's agent represents the interests of the buyer. So what we do is we would help the buyer filter out what are the good deals, and I would recommend to the buyers what the upsides and the downsides are of the filtered properties, and then we decide together. Number two, the agent commissions are paid by the seller in the US. What it means is that before a property is listed, the agent commission is already determined, and if a buyer goes without an agent, then the seller's agent keeps the whole commission, and most of the time, as in 95% of the time, a buyer would have the buyer's agent. So the pre-negotiated commission would be split 50-50 between the seller's broker and the buyer's broker. But the point being that here in the US, the agent commission comes from the seller. Number three, finding a property agent in New York. So what I recommend buyers do is interview a few buyer's agents, and the buyer can do a search on Google and schedule time to talk to agents about what the buyer wants, and have the interview process to get to know the buyer's agent. Because here the norm, and I'm moving to point 4, expectations is for the buyer to work with one buyer's agent. This way there's mutual loyalty on both sides. As a buyer, you don't want to be working with multiple agents because if the buyer's agents know that, then there's no loyalty, and if the buyer's agent is still working with the buyer despite knowing that there are multiple buyer's agents, chances are the buyer's agent is not that in demand, if you will. The top brokers all have the expectations for the buyer to work with only one buyer's agent. Why? It's because the property inventory is public, so everyone has access to the same inventory, including the consumer or the buyer. And number two is that if the buyer's agents know that the buyer is working with multiple agents, they are going to try to sign you in first, or to register you first with the seller's agents. So then it becomes a quantity process where everyone is just trying to register you for as many properties as they can. So long story short, do the interviews, spend time on it, and then decide to work with one buyer's agent. And after you have identified the buyer's agent, the process begins. The way we do it is that during the interview process, we would know the buyer quite a bit already, and then we would filter out properties, share financials with the buyer, and start the process. And what a buyer's agent does is basically identify the right deals, negotiate the property price and terms, and bring the buyer through the whole process until closing. What does that mean? It means bringing the lawyer together, bringing the lender, coordinating the whole process, and being the quarterback, if you will, to bring the transaction to closing. This is a brief bio of myself, and thank you for watching.